So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Brainfeed EdTalks episode 27, the most awaited episode. We are going to have a discussion on can national education policy do to K-12 what Netflix did to cinema. We have a panel of stalwart experts with us today. The chair of panel discussion, Mr. Vinesh Menon, CEO, Education Skilling and Consulting Services, Ampersand Group, our esteemed panelists, Mr. Kanak Gupta, Director of Seth M.R. Jaipuria Schools, Ms. Lakshmi Kumar, Founder and Director, the Orchid School, Pune, Ms. Alka Kapur, Principal, Modern Public School, Delhi, and Mr. Manish Naidu, Founder of Brainwonders. I welcome all the panelists for joining us today in this episode, again for the second time to make this episode a success. And I request all the viewers to please share your queries and questions in the comments on Facebook, and we will be taking up all your questions after the panel discussion. Thank you so much. I request Vinesh sir to please take over.
Thank you, Kannan, and good evening, everybody,
Good
ladies and
evening.
gentlemen,
Good evening.
and fellow
Good evening.
panelists. First of all, on behalf of all the panelists, I wish all the viewers and everybody out there, a safe and I wish you and all your loved ones are safe, and I wish all of you go through this very challenging period with all the strength. We were supposed to be there with you all last week, actually on the 10th of May. Unfortunately, because of some technical glitch, that couldn't happen. And as promised, all of us are here except one. Mr. Tushar Kikani from Coimbatore unfortunately couldn't make it. He's a little unwell. And no, it is not the dreaded C word. It's just a slight eye infection and he's just resting. A week has gone by. It's been a very dynamic week. We have entered into lockdown 4.0, and we've been seeing the finance minister give a slew of relief packages over the last 1 week. States have started to slowly open up many sectors. We see factories opening up. We see the aviation sector starting to open up. Indian Railways have started to get their tickets go online. However, there are two sectors which clearly are not yet opening up. One is cinema halls and the other is schools. And interestingly, there is a certain link to these two sectors if you really look at today's topic, which actually says if the national education policy can do to K-12 education what Netflix can do to cinema. Interestingly, when this whole lockdown started and this whole COVID started showing its very, very difficult face to everybody, most of the industries started to panic. We have, education, transportation, hospitality, aviation, they all went through stress. Netflix, however, increased their subscriber base by almost 3 times. And we just kind of setting the context where Netflix actually went around being very, very happy about this period because most of the people started to enjoy movies from the comforts of their drawing rooms and from the comfort of their personal privacy. And one went on to think whether Netflix is going to really, start to change the way people view movies, and whether cinema halls and movie theaters will slowly start, uh, you know, losing their audience because they rather sit at home and watch the same movie in a much better environment. And so then it started to go around, and a lot of people started wondering whether something like this can happen in education. Parents started wondering this, teachers started wondering this, students started wondering this. Can education really do the same thing as how one views cinema through Netflix at home? And that is exactly what we're going to be discussing today. And as Kannan introduced, we have a very, very esteemed set of panelists out here with us. Uh, I would like to reintroduce them, but not with the hats that they're wearing today. I'm going to reintroduce them all as representatives or key influencers within the Ministry of Human Resource and Development. Each of them today are in that ministry, and they hold a very, very um influential power on the draft national education policy, which is frankly the final draft is out, and everybody's actually waiting for it to be published. And really speaking, the way we're going to go about talking today is how each one of them, if they had the power to make some changes in this national education policy, uh, what would they want to do, and what kind of thoughts do they have when they want to make these changes, and especially given that we've gone through this very interesting 50 to 60 days of COVID experience. So with no further ado, I'd like to kind of start the discussions. All of you are, frankly, forget your current roles. You're all part of MHRD, and I'm talking to all of you as MHRD influencers. Kanak, I'm going to start with you. I remember you and I talking in one of the earlier webinars, and you've been telling me about your daughter, 10-year-old Sarah, who's asked you a very interesting question, and the question was, when do I and when do I go and share my tiffin box with my benchmate, right, or something to that effect? When do I share my tiffin box with my classmate? And
Right.
if that is a kind of emotion that sets into a 10-year-old, uh, do you really think the whole Netflix kind of experience in cinema can really be brought into the drawing rooms of our homes as far as education is concerned, as far as children are concerned? Chapter 23 of the NEP really talks about how technology is going to change a lot of things. But Sarah wouldn't quite agree to that, would she?
Vinesh, thank you so much for having me as part of the show, and compliments to you for selecting this topic for discussion. I thought it was very interesting. It really makes one think. So compliments to you for doing that, and I'm really happy that we have a very distinguished panel. Looking forward to the discussion this evening. You're right, Vinesh. Yes, Sarah did say that. She did ask me that what will happen, and whenever the schools open up, be it in August, be it in October, be it next year, do I get to share my tiffin box with my friends? And we at that time had no answers, and we still don't have answers to that question. And it's very these are uncertain times, unprecedented, and we accepted it that this is something we'll have to sort of play it by the ear. But we chose to tell her the truth. We chose to discuss it with her. We chose to tell her that, hey, we do not know. We're also finding out things as we are moving along. We kept it very transparent. We've been honest with her. And for me, that was a starting point as an educator as well, to start looking at the schools, to all the children who are probably going through the same emotion, the same kind of thought process, what role technology would have in the teaching learning process. Because I think as educators, all of us strongly believe that the child has to be at the center of the teaching learning process. And you cannot make technology the center. Technology is always, we believe, the facilitator. Technology is, what you use to. Uh, uh, as to how I see this is that, obviously every pandemic, every disaster can be an opportunity, and Netflix has sort of raised the bar up there. But I also feel that the experience of the classroom, we can replicate it on the technology platforms. We can definitely bring in a little bit of teaching learning, but the face-to-face interaction, we will need to go back to the schools. We will need to go back to the classrooms. The sanctity of the school classroom will need to come back. That is what I strongly believe. Uh, I think that the hat that you've given us with the influencer with the government for NEP. Uh, I strongly believe that the toughest challenge would be for the younger classes to uh, continue any kind of hybrid learning, to bring in elements of technology and the classroom, and to continue this over a long period of time. Because let's be honest, till a vaccine comes out, for us to get rid of this hybrid learning will not happen. And I think we've learned a lot. I think we've grown a lot over the last 2 months. We've understood that we can do this sitting in the comforts of our home. So we need to have a blended approach. I think if I was an influencer the government, the first thing I would look at is rewriting these elements of the NEP. Number one. Number two, I would pay special focus to hiring teachers for attitude rather than just degrees. And degrees, I would look at revamping. And what we've seen, what we've realized is that yes, technology can be an enabler, but teachers who can sort of engage children, teachers who can sort of engage with parents as well, because we're talking about very small kids as well, those have done much better than those who are sort of apprehensive about technology. So I think, I would make it a national mission that let's hire for attitude over degrees. And the third thing that I would do is look at bringing real issues to the classroom across the board. I'm not even looking at the senior classes, but also at the junior classes. That is something that I would be looking at as an influencer with the government right now.
Kanak, that's a brilliant start. I think those 3 points were absolutely bang on, and especially the first point and the third point. Second point, yes, very, very important. I think for there is a paragraph completely on teacher recruitment and deployment, and we would of course come to that too. But the first and third point are very, very interesting. In fact, the first point I want to take a little extension to that through Ms. Alka Kapur. Ma'am, the NEP really talks about your chapter one and chapter 1.2 of NEP really talks about how early child education is so critical, right? Because 85% of the child's brain is almost cumulatively developed before the age of 6. And we all know that early child is all about the way of teaching, the playway way of teaching. It's all about fundamental learnings in numeracy and literacy. The whole alphabets, tones, sounds, colors. How, one can't really do this through the drawing room, can you? I mean, I understand that these are all areas where you would need the teacher and another helper to be there next to the child, repeat, reiterate. How do you really do this remote? So in a way, I think that particular point of what Kanak mentioned, you would agree to that?
Yeah, to begin with, of course, I thank Brainfeed for this live session and sincere gratitude to you, Mr. Menon, for setting the ball rolling. And it's been a fabulous start. And again, I wish to learn a lot from this panel. As I told you, NEP is a difficult topic these days because nothing is certain. And online classes are here to stay as much as COVID is. We cannot deny the fact it's not going anywhere. I personally feel education is a passport for the future, and tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. The key to successful learning experience and any early childhood education lies in the interaction and bond between a child and a teacher, which cannot actually be done so effectively from the drawing room, as you said. By taking students beyond the textbooks or immediate surroundings, online teachers can try to do it. And I think this happened all of a sudden. We were thrown in the unknown waters, we were not prepared for it. But teachers have been doing a beautiful job. They've, they've got this experience now, and I think everyone is getting comfortable, the parents, the students, the teachers. Technology certainly enables a teacher to explain various concepts in an interesting manner, using videos, using other apps, using interactive content. For example, earlier a teacher used to take a child to the zoo. Now, taking a child to this field trip will not be actually possible. So, the best way the teacher can do it, expose the child to the website of the zoo, and then teach the child about the various habits of the animals and showing them graphics, animations, etc. I think our teachers are doing a fabulous job when we talk about this preparation, as much as research suggests us that it's not only the connectedness linked to better academic outcomes, but students who feel connected to teachers are less likely to bunk classes, so bunk school. So in a brick and mortar school, I think all these things were, the connectedness was far better. I certainly advocate for a brick and mortar school, but then coming to these online classes, because what cannot be cured must be endured. Right now, we have no option but to enjoy the best out of these online classes. The children are going through an emotional distress, and how the teachers are managing it online, the bullying part which was there in the classes. So everything has a positive and a negative to it. Technology can certainly, facilitate meaningful change if it is done within the supervision of an adult, be it a
Yeah. So, ma'am,
teacher, be it a parent.
yeah. So, ma'am, I'm just gonna. Sorry, I'm trying to get a specific answer, and I think you
Yeah.
probably touched a lot of that in some of the points that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Emotional learning is very, very important for the early children, right? And the early
Yeah. The
age
face to face
kids.
connect. I was coming to that.
Yeah, and I was referring to your whole point of bullying and the fact that brick and mortar bullying versus online. Now, somewhere is that how does a young little kid, a child, who's, let's say, 5, 6 years old, how does he or she start getting an emotional connect with society if teaching is remote?
If teaching is remote, certainly the teamwork goes. I have a 3-year-old granddaughter in my house, and it's absolutely difficult for me to make her sit in front of the computer for an online class. But yes, when the teacher is effective, when the communication of the teacher is so effective that the child is able to get involved, the teacher needs to show a personal touch. The teacher needs to call names, because otherwise the child says, I'm not listening to this lady, because there's no connection. Unfortunately, this is the time when the new classes had just begun, and the children were not used to the teacher. A new teacher came up, so at that time it's the intelligence of a school how to manage the online timetable also, and how to give a teacher to the class who is previously attached to the students, and a teacher who's able to not just about theoretical knowledge, is not able to impart just theoretical knowledge, but is able to do activities with the children, is able to do involve the child in some kind of singing, dramatics, dance, music, theater, to get that interest. So a lot depends on the quality of the teacher particularly, I
Right.
personally feel. And yes, online is the future, so we might as well get adjusted and used to it. As much as I certainly endorse that better upbringing, better schooling happens in a face to face class, in a brick and mortar school.
Yeah, and I think somewhere, I think for the early years, the parental engagement is also very important, right? Because in the school,
Absolutely.
you do have a teacher and an assistant in a way in the early years. So in the home, if you don't have a parent right next to the child, and if it's a working parent, the challenge gets that much more difficult. Kanak,
I
what's
mentioned
your?
that. I mentioned
Yeah.
that online education, online teaching, learning for the preschoolers particularly, for the foundation years, has to be in the presence of either a parent or a teacher. Either it is physically or it's virtually, whatever it be. It cannot be done alone.
Right. And I think that's what Kanak was mentioning about when you talked about the point one, the certain practical elements to be taken into account while changing the NEP draft. You actually mentioned that, I guess you meant this, Kanak, something like this as an example. Kanak,
Yeah.
you're on
So
mute.
I think, like, practical. Can you hear me now, right? So I think practically it'll be very difficult to the smallest ones. Like Alka ji was saying that she has a small kid at home, and it'll be very difficult to engage them because they don't understand. There has to be more structured. Teachers have to put out more structured methodology, and network is an issue. Technology can be a botheration for them, and engaging them, because the parents are also required to be engaged when the little ones are engaged. You cannot have a 3-year-old interacting with kids, etc., all the time. So with the teachers all the time, because you would need some structured approach from parents as well. That will be very difficult. I have a strong advice that for teachers, that for the smallest kids, pre-primary and primary wing, don't worry about the learning right now. Now look at skills beyond the content and the curriculum, because for them it's very new. For them to accept it would be very difficult. For them to get used to it will be very difficult. So let's look at engaging these kids right now, and making the best of the parental involvement. They are at home, parents are also there. Let them be spending time with the children. They also need to do work. So that is something that you'll have to be done.
As much as I would like to add that every assignment, homework, whatever you say, every activity should involve, rotate around or move around experiential learning. As in, I allow my granddaughter, I give her some dough, I ask her to make shapes. This is a circle, now this is a triangle. She's trying to make roti. She's feeling happy about it and still learning so much. So in a way, teachers should design lessons for them, be it online or whatever, so that they get an experiential learning which theories cannot teach. The session has to be extremely engaging, meaningfully interesting, and I think that's the way the little ones have to be
And I
handled.
think and I think highly interactive, which we
Highly
cannot.
interactive. Yes, communication will be the keyword. It shouldn't be boring. They should be using certain various tools, like for example, just showing PPTs will not work. They should come out with all those little props that they have, so that the other day now we taught her how to make an island. The entire lesson was delivered to her how to make an island, and that was so beautiful, fabulous. Today she can tell you about the recipes that she does. She makes her own mocktails. I mean, I'm telling you out of my own experience that we are doing, because it's the first time for us also, online class for a 3-year-old. So these things are really working wonders, and they are good learning experiences.
So in short, there is a way out. Not yet there, but there is a way out. But currently, I think far from what kind of experience Netflix gives. I think far from that as far as early learning is concerned. But let me now go beyond early learning into the next stages of what a child goes through. Ms. Lakshmi, you obviously are aware that the new policy now completely changes the categorization, right? We are getting into a 5+3+3+4 mode. And really speaking, the 5+3 takes care of the foundation and the preparatory stage. And after that, you get into the whole middle and the high school. And that, whole the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 11th, 12th. That's when the early, initiation into learning, the slightly more detailed connect to the subjects. And then as you get into the 9th and 10th, it gets deeper and deeper. The child is also getting more mature, and we are talking about digitally much more advanced kids, right? We are talking digital natives in today's world. In this case, will the whole learning experience be different? Do you think online, or let me not say online, but do you think the whole technology platform and the whole digitized way of delivery of education can work for the higher graded students?
First of all, thank you so much, Brainfeed, for this opportunity to discuss an MHRD perspective. And thank you, Vinesh, for appointing all of us as some kind of representatives. I think a couple of disclaimers. First of all, we need to know that this is not going to be an eternal reality. There will be partial reality of on and offline, but things will return to brick and mortar school. So it's also about having that faith that our children are probably having a very kind of a revisited experience for 6 months or 8 months. And I think we can also count that as a learning experience, lifelong learning experience. The second disclaimer is that, well, we have already landed as Netflix. Whoever thought that a 5th grade, a 6th grade, 7th grade, or 10th grade, or like now she said, 3-year-old, will be sitting in front of a screen, parallel to the Netflix, maybe not as interesting and as, choicefulness of, what you want to see and what you want to. But in terms of the behavior, we are already there. Perhaps not in terms of the engagement, maybe not in terms of the choices, maybe not in terms of the pure entertainment value, but we are already there in that sense. And looking at the middle level and the secondary and senior secondary level, um, they have, as you rightly pointed out, that they quite quickly and easily embrace technology. Whether they would be totally engaged in technology based learning, unfortunately, we equate learning to the content. So whether they would really embrace the content grasping through technology, only time will tell. And I think that's where the teacher has to become a magician. The teacher has to devise an online offline formula so that not full time you're engaged in only a PPT and a delivery. And perhaps this is the most important and a significant opportunity for us. When I say us, all significant adults, both teachers and parents, to slightly nudge our students for more self-learning mode. We have had so much of spoon feeding and so much of hand holding that this is a generation that probably will face a situation even later stage that they will have to take off on their own. So in that sense, the 4.6, thankfully, like a visionary has already talked about reducing the content. I think our over obsessed complete the content. I think we have compromised a lot all these years. We have had, I mean, till the graduate level, professional level, we have always had great content completion, but very poor employability. I think this is the time for us to pause. Is this content most significant at this time, or do I redesign certain content? Can I let go? And NCRT is telling us again and again, but I don't know why we drive on this content. The second question that's bothering a lot of educators right now is,
Ma'am,
how do I assess?
ma'am, sorry, there is a bit of a connection problem. Huh? You'll have to just, your voice is getting a little garbled.
How
Just repeat the
is that
last line.
okay?
Yes, better.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
last line.
As teachers, we are right now also so worried about the assessment. I think for a while, let's give priority to learning and take backseat the assessment. So you kind of also reduce the anxiety where it is not required. And 4.6 is talking about it, that we need to reduce the curriculum content to enable, essential learning. And if you look at the 4.7, that it does give you flexibility. But for some reason, we all are so comfortable doing what we have been doing. And Vinesh, as you remember that we discussed it, that right now the online is almost like a replica of offline. No, for heaven's sake, no. Create flexibility, reduce the content, bring in more, conversation based, more connection based, accommodate the social emotional element of learners. And the most important thing is that, NEP so beautifully talks about the integration, and it talks about skill building. This is also an opportunity for us to look at, which are so heavily technology based skill program like an artificial intelligence, or teaching them simple thing like an Excel program, or actually bring in a facilitator to talk about media literacy. So I think, you kind of work around the situation, take advantage of the situation, don't keep looking back at the past and say, but this is what we used to do. I think we need to redefine a lot of core educational objectives. That would be my recommendation.
I
Thank you.
completely agree. Thank you so much. In fact, my understanding is that a child in this particular category of learning would be probably getting into their teens, right? 11 to 14, a teen, a 13 or a 14-year-old child, or even a 12-year-old child these days. Imagine the child sitting in front of a PC and along with multiple other people or children, and the teacher almost does the same thing that you do in a classroom. And
I think,
that's a very awkward age, and I don't think the
yeah.
child would want to say, hey, look, I want to say something, because it's a much more meaningful conversation that the child requires at this stage. And I
I think
completely
we
endorse.
I think we misunderstand tech savvy generation to tech obsessed generation. No. If you see the same kids, the minute you give 5 minutes break, they're on the ground playing football, or hanging out, having a social interaction with their classmates and peers. And so it is not at all something that we need to be thinking about, that okay, these are tech consuming generation, so let's bring in more. I think this is where we probably may lose the plot with the young learners.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. So I mean, uh, take a point, a case in point. Let's say the solar system. If you want to teach a solar system, might as well tell the child or visually give him something to read or go through, and do your own discovery, and then start getting in an engagement process rather than trying to just push solar system through the online way of teaching.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, yes, some things have got kind of paralyzed right now, and everything is kind of a standstill. But there is 100 million things that are happening in a child's life, and there is a learning happening. And I think again and again in so many webinars, I have said this, that we need to accommodate those experience into the way that curriculum recognizes what the student is undergoing.
I agree. In fact, I've taken the liberty to, since you mentioned the clause 4.6 and 4.7, I thought I'll just take the liberty to open that in the NAP. And interestingly, Manish, and you might just want to give a little views here. The heading for 4.7 is empower students through flexibility in course choices. And it actually talks about how students of that age should start getting the flexibility to choose their own life path. Now, this is interesting, because on one side you want to empower them. There's going to be a big section of parents who's going to worry whether this actually would work. There's going to be a big section of teachers who's going to worry if this is going to work. And yet we also know that blind empowerment may also not necessarily help as they get into their career choices. What's your take? Because you come from the edtech space, and you have been involved a lot in the whole career counseling space. So what's your take for this particular statement that has been made by NEP? What would you like to say here? You're on mute. Manish, you're on mute.
Thanks, Vinesh. Thanks, Vinesh, for hosting this such wonderful panel. Let me just come back to why Netflix is Netflix, okay? So if you look at it, for an example, take Brainfeed as to be the school.
Sorry, Manish. May I request the others to go on mute, please? I think there's a little bit of an echo. Ms. Kapur, thank you.
Okay. Now let's take Brainfeed to be the school, you as a teacher and we as students. Now you have ensured that you will do the best out of all of us because A, you have obviously said that we are part of the national policy program and it has made us all sit very tightly and say, boss, look, there is one guy who knows us and that's the reason why we should be giving more. What I'm trying to say is how much of the educators know their clients or how much of the educators know their kids. Second, why is Netflix Netflix? Because if you constantly look at the Netflix screen, it will never be boring. It will tell you the top picks, right? It will tell you what you have seen last. It will tell you where are you now, what you are currently watching, which means Netflix is closely monitoring what it is about you, which means Netflix loves you, which means Netflix knows your ins and outs. And the same may not be true for the teacher or the educator who is doing it. So you would never skip a Netflix when you're doing it. In fact, the whole binge episode in the last time when we spoke about it is because they try to constantly give you one session after the other. Tell the same parents, tell the same educators, tell the same teachers, tell the same kids to sit on a webinar one after the other and no one would sit in. But then you would do it for the binge. Why? Because technology has enabled you to understand your child better. So Netflix has said that know your people better. And that's going to be the very key point. So does the education know it better? B, Netflix, you have said that has taken over almost what, 3 billion profit. The fact remains that whether it will sustain once the theater starts moving up, whether the mall starts functioning in, which means for the theaters to give the experience of Netflix, it will definitely retain its clients back. So the whole perspective is that whenever a technology-enabled platform or a system knows its client, it does wonderfully well. Facebook, Google, you name the clients, you name the technology companies, and it enables you better because they know you better. Alka ma'am and Lakshmi ma'am were talking about how the teachers can be enabled, the teachers can talk and the kids may or may not listen. Kanak was trying to say that how wonderfully, even if you have a 10-year-old child sit before the client, before the session, she may not. So the beautiful aspect about technology is she has the option of just switching her video off and move across and come back and do that. In the normal day life, your teacher wouldn't allow the child to just move on and come back in her own whims and fancies. So what I'm trying to say is technology enables the child to be better. One way of looking at the whole system in one way. Like an utopian world is something where the child is free to choose between classes. There are 18 or 10 or 12 different sessions going on and you could just come and sit, see the session and move out. That's what Netflix does, right? You can just skip it over, which means you need to know your client. Now, the problem is the first statement which you made, Vinesh, is that the child will not be in a position to know or to tell that what is right for me and what is not for me. Half of them don't even know why they are taught Pythagoras theorem when the only thing they would want to do is law, just to talk out loud. So if the teachers, if the educators, if the principal movers and shakers of the industry who would actually want to make a difference, you should go into the ground level and help understand your client, your child better. I'm using the word client, which is a more of a commercial term. But what I'm trying to actually emphasize very strongly is if you want to hold on the attention of your people, if you want to hold on to the attention of your kids, talk what they want to listen and what you want to talk in. And that's what Netflix is doing it. give liberty. So using technology, using platforms like Brainwonders to enable and understand the child on one part, and enable the directors and the educators understanding teachers on the other part, and enabling the parents understand the child, which means now all the three are helping and understand each other through a tech platform. It's a utopian world again.
But Manish, one would argue that a child who sits in a classroom for, let's say, 5 to 6 hours or 4 to 5 hours with the teacher would end up knowing the child very well, right? And then the child goes home, the parent anyway knows the child, and you have these PTMs, and the teacher and the parent interacts, and they get to discuss about the child. So what are we missing here? What element of the child are you really talking about when you say that they do not know their children? I'm sure many teachers may not take this very kindly. So what exactly are you trying to say here?
Well, to start with, the unfortunate problem is the teacher who is there with the student doesn't have only one student. She has got many students. And who spends 6 hours. And the parent who has only one child doesn't spend even half of the 6 hours with the child. Tell me one parent who is systematically going in back home and spending 1, 2, 3 hours with the child and actually knowing about the child, about their interest levels, about their strengths, about their weakness, about their characteristics, about their personality, about their learning styles, about everything about the particular child. And the teacher, she would obviously know about the child when she walks into the classroom if one is bright and one is not bright. But the outliers will be easier to find out in both the aspects. But the average 95% of the population, they just disappear in the crowd. You would never be able to reach to a classroom where there are 25 kids and point out the ones which are average. You would always point out the ones who are not here and not studying in, and you will always point out the ones who are outliers and brilliant and who always give a lot of questions. Second, the teacher is not empaneled with only one student or one classroom or one session. She has got so many other things to do. Back there, as a parent, she would feel that the teacher is doing the job, the school is doing the job, the tuition teacher is doing the job. The child seems to understand a lot of things which she is doing in. Like, for example, Sarah, Kanak's kid, she's inquisitive in the nature to identify that her interpersonal intelligence is so great that she doesn't mind if the school is open or not. All she wants to do is take up the lunchbox and go and meet with her friends. So for her, the agenda is totally different from what Kanak would want to send her to. So the point out here is, if the teacher who enters into the classroom without any prejudice about how the student reacted the last time will be in a position to know a consistency of the behavior of the particular child, it would be so much better. I'm dead sure all 5 of us cannot perform similarly in all webinars. We may perform well, we may not perform well, we may be prejudiced in our way of making you understand what we want to say. The child may give that sort of a behavior depending on what has happened at her home, or what has happened maybe 5 minutes before the classroom the teacher entered in. What if the teacher picks up that particular behavior and says, "Ki boys, I entered in and you were just spitting around." Maybe she was cupping, maybe she wanted to spit in. I'm just trying to tell you a hypothetical situation. Prejudice is a very strong aspect whenever you are sitting where you're judging each other. And if you have a platform which can help reduce that prejudice and say, "Ki boss, see, this is a problem or this is a strength," it makes life much more easier. Making life easier is what Netflix will do. Making life easier is what educators should do. They shouldn't be worried about what the children are doing in, whether they are sitting, whether they are not sitting in. If the teacher is powerful enough, the teachers will sit, the kids will sit.
Okay, so the teacher is powerful enough. Great word. And that's exactly what chapter 5 talks about. And that's what even Kanak referred to when we talked about hiring teachers, hiring the right teachers, attitude. Now, the fact of the matter is today teachers need to be B.Ed qualified. They need to pass the TET, and then they can come on board as a teacher. So how are we now going to, how is this going to change?
See, it's the wrong question being asked. Okay. Anyone who comes into a corporate sector has an hierarchy. Somebody who is Doyleson as a sales manager would like to go off as a business admin or somebody who is a business manager. For the teachers, apart from the fact that they would love teaching, there is no other successful goal in their life. What is it which you're enabling them? Nothing. You're loading them with a lot of things. Even the 6th pay commission is not as good as what it should be, or the 7th pay commission. And my wife being a government servant, she still has to get it. I mean, just if somebody from the government is watching in. So there has to be a motivation factor for the teachers, and that's missing. The only motivation, truth be told, is a gratitude of what the children come out with, and they say after maybe the 10th or 12th, and after they have done it, ma'am, I remember you are my teacher, and it's a great thing. Apart from that, I don't think you are enabling teachers with anything and everything apart from pressure from the teachers, pressure from the kids, pressure from the management, pressure from the educators, pressure from the home. They are literally playing God. So you have to enable God.
Manish, I don't know how you're going to, this is some very strong statements that you've made. I'm just going to quickly, and it's such a sensitive topic, but I'm really going to take a little input from both Ms. Kapoor and from Ms. Kumar. Ms. Kapoor, you've been obviously, in this profession for a while. Ms. Kumar, you've seen a lot. Starting with you, Ms. Kapoor, you're seeing a lot of new teachers come on board, right? I'm sure you must be seeing the younger generation teachers. Hand on your heart, what's your take? What do you think? Do you think they fit the bill? Do you think they need to be slightly better filtered to be brought on board? What's your take? Manish has said a lot of things, and I tend to agree, but I don't want to pass a judgment here. I would like to get your views. And you're on mute, ma'am. Ma'am, you're on mute.
Okay.
No, I thought you are telling to Alka ma'am and Lakshmi ji.
Yes, I am. I'm asking Ms. Kapoor to talk.
Yeah. So, as I said, the only reason for a child to come to school is not academic achievement or to gain academic excellence. It's also about behavior management, rather more about behavior management. Earlier, the balance used to be very beautiful. There are families who are very well trained for raising a child. There are families who are not so well trained because of whatever reasons. I'm not going to mention those reasons. Earlier, the balance used to be good. The children used to come to trained hands, that is the teachers. Of course, during our B.Ed, we are trained for many, many things. So they used to come to trained hands. We used to notice certain things, and we used to communicate with the parent and tell them that this area needs to be checked. This area needs modification or correction. Now the children are in the custody of the parent all the time. So that particular task has to be handled and dealt with very, very wisely. When you say teachers in comparison to the previous years, yes, teachers are far more savvy on computers. They can gather knowledge from across the world. Earlier, we were only dependent on reading. Many teachers of my age particularly still get confused when it comes to computers or something, but actually Google has a lot of knowledge and a lot of information for everyone. So I feel in an organization it has to be a combination of new ideas coming in through new teachers and old qualities of dedication, discipline. Not that I'm saying that new ones are not dedicated. I am having certain fabulous teachers who are very, very young. They've got great ideas. And I'll tell you how we've done in our school. We've had Nukkad Nataks online. We've had orientation program online. We had investiture ceremony online. Everything was done, but actually it was not as beautiful. The flavor was missing, not as beautiful as a brick and mortar school. Right now, as Manish said and as Lakshmi said, our prime focus should not be on delivering the lessons. Our prime focus should be on relieving the stress that the children are going through, because in every family there is something to feel sorry about, as in someone has lost a relative, someone has lost a job, someone has dearth of money, some has dearth of facilities, whatever it could be. So at this point of time, the role of a teacher is far more than just be a facilitator or the one who delivers a lesson. You
Sure.
need to be a counselor, and I think the teachers are doing a fantastic job. I've started calling them COVID heroes because they are handling a big chunk of the population, not just delivering academics and the knowledge to them, but also contributing in handling stress with the children. We've been doing we've taught them how to cook for themselves. We are teaching them through stories. We are teaching them through open book, when someone was talking about the evaluation or the test. we are designing the exams, the tests, the evaluation in such a fantastic method that it caters to their problem solving capacities also. Like, for example, an English chapter that is being taught, later the teacher asked them to give it all together a different turn. It was a happy thing. How to make it a happier thing, as in
Sure.
all the positive things are being done. And I think the role of teachers, both the ones who've been very experienced and the ones who've been new to the line, I think they are all interacting with each other, and as a team, teachers are able to do a fantastic job.
Sure. Good. No, no, thank you so much. And that's very encouraging for the teachers. Ms. Lakshmi Kumar, what would you say? Would you like to, if you were to make a little changes to that topic of teacher hiring and recruitment and deployment, would you like to add anything specific? And especially keeping in mind that given how we all suddenly went through this COVID period, and I think Ms. Alka Kapur said it right, that today's teachers shouldn't just teach; they should also be able to, be on quick on the feet in terms of how to flex themselves and take charge in an environment which is so challenging. So, would you like to change the way teachers are hired going forward?
Um, let me put it like this.
I hope you're not going to be diplomatic.
No, not at all. I'm hardly known for that. Well, we have to pick from what the talent is available. I mean, we still haven't even changed our B.Ed teacher education, teacher certification course to even align it with the learner profile. Okay, so having said that, what we have, we start with that. I think where the real difference of an institution to institution is how well you skill them for employability. Whether it is about an intense in-service training program, perhaps an induction program, ongoing learning opportunities, and a lot of mentoring and hand-holding, and teachers become fantastic professionals. So I think we need to think about, there's this very beautiful saying that, the forest has, if everybody works beautifully, so we don't have that kind of a readily employable, and again, going back to MHRD never thought of education as the most important sector in which we need to invest. I mean, a salesperson or an MBA guy gets so much of, social status to importance to all the, salary structures to everything. What does a teacher get? Not even a good, meaningful, relevant, contemporary education. But despite that, she gets in and she makes meaning out of what is there. And not even, and we don't have one uniform education, a teacher coming from an SSC board school to CBSC to IB to, so she has to make a lot of adaptation, and each organization culture is also different. And so she has to adapt to that. And then she has constantly evaluators. And if anything has happened, the worst is the COVID time. Right now, every teacher is getting evaluated more positively or negatively by every parent who is sitting there almost like a co-learner. I think we need to understand that making a good teacher eventually is left to the organization right now. So I may not have a great talent available, and I have done that. When you have a walk-in interview, you have 200 candidates walk in. At the end of the day, sometimes you don't even have 5. So I think what is important is to see where we can start from. And I think it's not an overnight and a solution, because we haven't nowhere, it talks about NEP is not talking about teacher quality education. Very, very briefly touches, but 5 years, and there is so much resistance of 5-year certification. So I think we need to look at it in a very holistic way when it comes to teacher availability. But having said that, teachers have made sense of what they need to do. They have, decoded this curriculum, and they have risen up to the occasion. Right now, I know there are so many teachers, even in my own institution, who were hesitant to switch on a computer 5 years ago. And I think no other community has risen to the situation as, the teacher community right now. And I think we need to give huge credit, and, they can be called fairies, heroes, heroines, whatever. But the fact of the matter is that we still haven't got the due recognition. I mean, I was just thinking that, we are still, it's a joke that was going on. We are still considered a non-essential service, and anytime there is a budget cut, that this year we will not have any priority in the budget for education. If there is, on one hand, we want to talk about inclusive education, and the next time you will say, but kajana khali hai. So I think this double talk is something that we really cannot afford to take it to the teacher community at all. We need to be very honest and acknowledge the context in which they are operating.
Interesting, very interesting words, and that reminds me of what Manish mentioned. Manish actually talked. He kept telling client, industry, and these are words which have really not been associated to the education ecosystem. A lot many people do not like students and parents to be called clients. Nobody likes to call this an industry. But Kanak, I think it's important, right? I mean, eventually, if you really get down to economics, the fact of the matter is that there is a rupee in and a rupee out. Rupee out goes into providing services, and rupee in is what we get to provide those services. And therefore, in that context, what's your take on, as we move into this whole blended digital form of learning, as was what I pick up from whatever everyone talked? You think it's going to get economically more viable? And interestingly, the NEP really doesn't touch upon any of those things. There is no mention of a trustee or a school management or a school owner, and the areas that probably, the I won't say do's and don'ts, but that's an area which has just been left out. What's your take on that? And you can choose not to answer if you want to be on the right side of the government.
No, you know me not to be diplomatic at all, and I'm not going to hold back on that. But see, the thing is, so I agree with what Lakshmi ji was also saying, that we are looking at a situation where we want the teachers to overnight become these warriors to spearhead everything, but we don't want to give them tools. We don't want to make it a respectable profession. Let's be very honest. Most of our teachers get into the teaching profession not because they always dreamt of being a teacher, or and that's the sad situation for the simple reason. Like, I'm just stretching it a bit. When everyone talks about Finland and people talk about Sweden and how teaching is a very high-end profession over there, like, I get very annoyed because contextually we are very different to a Finland, we are very different to a Sweden. But what they've done well, they've done fantastically well, is that they've made teaching a very respectable profession. You're paid very much. You like being a teacher. You like going to school. Most of our teachers do not get that much of money because, it's a social cause, and we should not be talking about numbers. We should not be talking about viability. We should not be talking about the fee coming in and the expenses, because, being a school promoter, we all know how expensive it is to maintain a school asset, how expensive it's going to be in the future also to maintain the school asset. It's going to cost money to sanitize the schools, to make schools okay with social distancing norms, to have technology going on for hybrid learning. We need to have funds for all of that. I don't think that everyone sort of gets it, that there are a lot of expenses for running a school. So I think the time is definitely there when the NEP should talk about these things. We should talk about economics of a school just as a business, for the simple reason, until and unless we look at it that way, the scaling up that we talk about, the vision and dream that we have that we should be better or at par with our contemporaries across the world, unless we have that kind of economics going on, we will not be able to achieve it. It's not simple. My good friend, whom you know as well, Vinesh Jaipuria, always says that, the CEO says that let's go for a training session, and the CFO says that, why train the people? They're going to leave any which way. And then the CEO says, what if they stay? So, you have to always invest on the training and reorientation of your teachers, your staff members, upskilling. All of that is important. It needs time, effort, money, all of it. And unless we talk about schools in an economic sense, it will not make sense to anyone.
Yeah, I think I agree. And Ms. Lakshmi, I know slightly short on time, but would you like to add on to that? I think you also founded Orchid from scratch. And in your case, especially, there would have been investments which have gone into the infrastructure and to the whole building of the school. And what's your view? Do you agree with Kanak?
Totally. And see, of course, uh, this has multiple sides to one reality. So there is a parent reality which we are not going to ignore. There is a student reality. There is a employee, not just the teachers. You have a whole ecosystem of employee reality. Then there is a management which is always viewed as an evil, but their reality is also about payment of bills. We had just had this very casual conversation of abhi to 3 mahine school band hai, so there will be less expenses. How? Do we have even an idea of, you still have your bills to pay, you still have your maybe bank EMIs or whatever, rent, or those capital investments to pay, you have your full staff to pay, and when you return back you have a whole lot of infrastructural arrangement that we need to do for the way that we will be running the school in the new normal way. So I think this narrative has multiple sides, and depending on which side you are in, you will choose the narrative. But the point is that if you were to pick school system as sports nahi hai, library nahi hai, laboratory nahi hai, and now there is going to be only online teaching. Instead of 7 hours school, you're going to do only, let's say for a grade 1 or 2, 2 hours. So you're really 1/3 of the time you're cutting down. If you're going to segment this whole, we forget that very soon we are all going to come back. This is a very, very temporary arrangement. Even in the temporary arrangement, the bills haven't stopped for any of us, me as a parent or you as a owner. Nothing is stopped. And I think it's the same reality that we are all actually running. And in all this, and we have unfortunately a common villain. Nobody has ever given any stop options to private education sector. This 20 lakh crore, was there any sentence about private entrepreneur education is going to get any kind of financial support? No. On the contrary, what has been the diktat? Don't push the fees, don't remind the fees, pay for all the staff, don't remove any staff, keep everything going as usual. I think there is some kind of, everybody wants to be nice to somebody. But in all this, I think we all will be navigating certain realities. And in all, and the worst would be that if we were to say all our life, Gurur Devo Bhava, you know and we are so known for that as a culture. We'll put the women goddesses on the wall, but really when it comes to giving due respect, we will start discussing economics. Right now I feel that we cannot do that with our teacher community. We cannot say forever and ever Guru Devo Bhava, and nobody like a teacher, and teacher make that every great cliches. Now is the time to show it in action, that we really mean that we respect our gurus.
I think that's spoken straight from the heart. Yeah, so I think it's about 6:30. Would love to continue to discuss, but I'm just going to take the liberty of asking one question to each of you to give an answer. Starting with you, Manish.
Yeah,
Okay, and just say yes, no, or partly.
that's it. Huh?
That's it. So it's a topic. Can national education policy do to K-12 what Netflix can do to cinema?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, no.
Yes.
You're very confident about that.
Yeah, very
So you
confident.
believe that technology and education can get together and bring it to the drawing room of a home, and completely, probably even replace brick and mortar to a large extent.
It should be. And if you add one more statement, I said customer experience is the best one. So I think each one of you who would want to implement a lot of things, have a survey of the 10th standard students who go out and see what could have been done in the last 10 years in the school, and they will tell you what has to be done. So, I mean, that's one way of letting you know what you have to do, rather than, what they know, they would want rather than what you want to teach.
Okay, fair enough. Kanak, same question.
So I would say partly. I don't think fully. I'm a big believer of technology. I believe that there's a lot of good that can be done with technology. But I feel that you cannot replace the brick and mortar experience. I think that's also important. So I think a good balance, and I use the word hybrid always. I think that is what's required. So I'm going to say partly.
Thank you. Ms. Kapoor, Alka ji, you're on mute, ma'am.
A
Ma'am,
minute,
you're on
I
mute.
want.
She wants 2 minutes
I've been
rather than
muted.
yes or no. Yeah.
No, ma'am, yours.
No,
Yours.
no. First, I would want to add something to what Kanak said, what was very, very important, that education is taken as an expenditure in the country, while it should be taken as an investment. And when you talk about teacher training, what if the teacher leaves or what if the teacher stays? My thought is that we as administrators and we as the elite of the education fraternity should feel, even if a teacher leaves after getting trained, that teacher's training is not going to go a waste. It is in any ways going to benefit somewhere, if not in my school, maybe in some other school. So what we've had is a peer education system and experiential learning for the teachers also. As we say, it's for the students. Like every class, there is a peer observation. If someone has got good soft skills, the other one who's good at maybe blackboard work is learning the soft skills from that one, and the one who is good at soft skills is learning how to handle the blackboard, and many more things. So I think in-house training is also very important, and it works like magic. And particularly in my school, I think the teachers, any training comes. I was just reading somewhere, there is no budget in schools for training. I'm sorry to say there is, and schools are actually investing a lot of money on trainings. So my point contradicts the comment here. When you say, is Netflix going to do what uh, to
Yeah, so
cinema,
is K-12
yeah,
going to
is
be like Netflix?
online education going to do what Netflix has done to cinema? Partially, yes. Partially, yes, but not completely, yes.
Okay.
Because it focuses more on regional languages. It focuses, while I think the focus, ask anyone,
But
what
that's,
do you want your
ma'am,
child
that's
to learn?
interesting.
And they would say,
Since you mentioned regional languages, let me tell you the National Education Policy has a complete section on really starting to vernacularize and bring in regional
precisely,
flavor.
this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. But if you ask anyone, even if I ask a maid in my house, what do you want your child to do? And she will say, usko English medium school mein padhana hai. So I think partially, yes, the few chapters of NEP are really good, but few chapters actually
Finish.
need to a relook. I would
Finish.
now mention what Sadhguru says here, that everyone is trying to move towards the elite. That is, everyone wants to get into the university. And if everyone gets into the university, who is going to grow food for us? Why? I mean, the farmers, people feel they are illiterate. It's a non-scientific job. It's a very, I mean, it's not a respectable job just because it doesn't have a lot of money. Talk about a plumber, talk about an electrician. I think if money and honor come to all these things, people should opt for more jobs. And again, a variety of vocational subjects could be taken up by the students. Right now, if you ask a parent, do you want your child to be a plumber, and they will say no. What I say is, start from the vocation and then become high level contractors in it, and
Sure.
all the soft skills that you will be taught in school by the
Sure, ma'am. So I get the drift.
Just
Sorry,
one
Manish.
second. I just want to add on that I think it's time that they also have the teachers taken via assessments. If there is so much of focus being put on the teachers rather than just doing interviews, do an assessment on the teacher and then take her in. Use the technology platform to assess the teacher so that
Okay.
it starts right from the start.
Sure. So keeping that as a context, the final summary from your side, ma'am, Netflix versus Netflix for cinema and K-12 going online.
Why should we have either or? Why not both? Bring the
Okay.
best elements of Netflix and don't lose the connectedness to the students. Don't lose the connectedness to interpersonal connect and emotional social element of actual schooling. But at the same time, get the principles of engagement, probably some of it from Netflix. And I think that's going to be the future, that we will need a blended, will need hybrid, or we will have a stop-start model of learning. Couple of days of school and then couple of days of home online learning. So I think why either or? Take it and.
Right. No, that's interesting. Except for the EduTech representative on this group, everybody has been, going the digital way and bringing in a certain balance. But I agree. I mean, even if you look at the movie-going ecosystem, while I'm sure Netflix can give a lot of excitement to people to sit in the drawing rooms and watch movies, nobody can take away that whole experience of ganging up, going to the theater,
True, true.
going to the counter, getting your own popcorn, sitting and watching it, coming out in the interval, having a little chit chat. Yeah, so
Well,
I guess both have to
sometimes
coexist.
just to make it very lighter, sometimes in the living room, we are four people discussing which movie to watch. And we have spent 1 hour discussing. Probably some of those are made very easy when you go to the theater. If you want, you get into this cinema hall, I get into that cinema hall. So it's not like, all is best now or all is worst now. I think we need to really look at everything in a balanced way. And it's a phase.
No, I agree
I
with
think
you.
we
And
need to give that, keep that in mind in all our choices. It's a phase. We don't have to get into this alarmist way of it's all over now. It's not over.
no, I agree with you.
Vinesh, truth be told, you just told me that you have to state in 2 words, and Alka took ample amount of time on explaining it. So so I agree with what Lakshmi ma'am says. You give the Netflix knowledge experience to the clients. Again, I'm using the words clients, but yeah.
It's okay. We understand.
Yeah, I think we have to understand that it's an industry now.
No, I think
that's we are fine with all those bad words. It's okay, Manish. I mean, it's an enterprise. So at the end of the day, we can call it client, customer, but I think at the end of the day, we are talking about our
Service
primary.
providers. Yeah, we are service providers. They are service takers.
the
Simple.
point taken.
Whatever,
Points taken.
whatever.
I think before we hand over the mic to Kanan and to the questions from the audience, I just want to say 5 points which at least I have picked up as keywords. I think I picked up the point of lot of practical changes to be done in the NEP.
Can you be a bit loud? Yeah. I think
more practical changes to be done in order to meet some of the more realistic challenges on ground, especially when it comes to early years. I think, very, very well mentioned by Kanak. The whole, the self-learning that one needs to induce in a child as you go into the higher classes. I think that's definitely very, very important. The whole teacher experience. The fact is that I think the teachers are definitely showing attitude, but probably we may have to bring in a certain change, an element of change in the way they are hired, bring in a certain element of technology, assessments, psychometric, whatever you call it. But probably we need to beef them up for a slightly higher way of, getting hired. I loved what Manish mentioned. Netflix loves their customers, and therefore, in a way, how much do we really know our child? How much do we really know our teachers? I think that there's a little bit of technology intervention out there. And finally, I think the whole area of economics. I don't want to emphasize it more, but the line I can say to especially all the parents who are viewing this webinar is that, I think by now it's become a very famous meme that the schools are not closed. It's the school buildings that are closed, right? School services continue. So with that, we kind of finish our conversation. We'll be open to questions. Kanan, I'm handing over the mic to you. If there are anything that's come on the screen which you would like to ask any of us, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. So there are many questions that have come in. So I'll be asking you the question, and you all can decide who would like to answer.
Yeah, but just try and categorize the questions because there'll be a lot of questions which are fairly similar. So just try and categorize them and then you can shoot them.
Right, sir. So one is on the assessments by Tejal Patil. Are there any current assessments that can be adopted for student assessment and guidance as directed by NEP?
Okay.
Vinesh, you are the best one, maybe.
No, I can only say that the NEP does emphasize on changing the way assessments are done for children. And I think, again, the whole technology would be an integral part of that. Ms. Lakshmi, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I think again, NEP was again written in a certain context, and it took a long time to release the NEP. And if I know, I think we are still going to redo some things. I think we need to reinvent assessment. Definitely, COVID or post-COVID pandemic time. I think we need to prioritize what really we need to assess. This whole idea of one paper and this whole race to competitive exams, all this we really need to take a pause and look at I mean, just now, where we don't even know whether, for example, CBSE 10th board exam, when will it happen? One paper. 12th board, some papers have to happen. I think we are really stuck with this pen paper assessment for so long that we not facilitated that our students can sit at home and, in their safe zones and still have the ability to test, not the content, ability to test all the skills. And NEP talks about it very, very beautifully. And I think we need to reinvent this assessment tool. And probably COVID is the time to say, let's get out of some of these very traditional content driven. And, even moderation is a joke sometimes, how it is getting corrected, how it is getting copied. I think we need to really relook at the assessment now.
Thank you. Thank you. Kanan, any other, the next question, please?
Yes, sir. The next question is on hiring the teachers by Mukta Sharma. How to assess attitude during selection process of teachers, as most of the people know how to be politically correct during selection process.
Perfect question for Manish. So
Yeah, I
basically,
think,
what she's saying is move from subjective to a different methodology, right?
right. Like for example, Kanak said that he would like to hire people with attitude, because knowledge and skills and education can always be imparted after you have reached a particular sector of training and degrees. So it's very easy to be a rock star in a particular interview only to know later on that it wasn't so. And by the time you obviously lose a lot of place. And I've seen a lot of teachers obviously who come in and say that they love their kids. I love students. You should love your teaching subject rather than loving kids. You love your subject and the teacher would know by themselves. So obviously the patented technology which we use identifies and assesses without any prejudice, without knowing what they are, no question and answer, no barrier being put in. So using the genetic intelligence test would obviously let us create a all-star workforce within your community, and that would help us understand and handle egos better. So it's high time we all prioritize assessment as one of a very key feature even before we move ahead.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kapoor, just one line. Would you agree with Manish? Only one line.
Yes.
Only one line.
I would agree with Manish, but yes, the panel has to be wise enough to assess both the work and the conduct during the interview as much as possible.
Got it.
True, obviously. Fair enough.
No, I wanted an academic perspective to it, so I'm glad that she aligns to what you mentioned overall. Kanan?
Want me to answer that?
No. I think we just did. Unless you want to add something more
No,
to that
that's okay.
question. Okay, Kanan, what's the next question?
Yes, so the next question is on the learning of a child. It is, will the NEP have guidelines for creating a balance of blended learning across K-12?
Yeah, I think that's what the whole webinar almost spoke about. But Kanak, would you like to just take that?
So we hope that the NEP would have more details and more guidelines for it. We're all very bullish that this would be addressed, and I think what this pandemic has done, and we probably would be going back to the drawing board. I strongly recommend we all keep sending our suggestions, and hopefully this will be addressed. As Vinesh said, this is what we discussed primarily throughout the webinar. So yeah, I guess there is some direction for all our schools going forward to have more technology integration going forward.
Vinesh, can I come in?
Yes, please do.
Unfortunately, the NEP's envisioning is very, dramatically beautiful, but the roadmap is not clear. I mean, we have a huge sector in India that has no access to technology. I mean, right now it looks like no access to sometimes very basics of food and shelter, and let alone technology. There is a huge disruption in learning. Or even look at a typical urban scenario or a upper middle class school. We still have teachers who don't have easy access to a good bandwidth to conduct lessons. We have a whole sector of students who don't have or who haven't thought of that as a priority. So I think again, this COVID needs to wake us up on where do we as families invest? Where do we as institutions invest for this to be a reality? In terms of a technology-enabled learning, technology-enabled teaching. Otherwise, I think it will be very, kind of one side is swollen and the other side is completely depleted. I think this is something. I mean, I look at students who have, taken admission through the RTE quota. I don't know how many of them have a laptop, how many of them are right now working only through the mobile. And I know some of the teachers probably don't have access. And even within the urban city, sometimes you don't have a great network. So I think it's a whole lot of those questions that the government has to figure out and invest in to make this a reality.
Sure. And I just kind of,
May
yeah,
I?
sure.
Not just that. I think NEP is happening, of course, at the national level, and there are remote areas where, of course, there is no connectivity. There are no good teachers available. Teachers wouldn't like to go, even if you want to have those robots teaching. Things are not as easy as much as the first question that came to Lakshmi ma'am about the revision of how the assessment is going to be revised. It is certainly a plan in the NEP, because they are planning on the semester system, as in 2 semesters in every class, and that too in the formative sense. They are going to assess a child. They are giving us freedom to design our own curriculum. They are giving us freedom to take the textbooks that we want. So NEP certainly is coming with a lot of freedom in the education fraternity. Of course, a child can choose whichever board a child wants to use for whichever subject a child wants to use. So that kind of a freedom is there. But again, is the child in any part or in different parts of India wise enough to make that right decision? Is what addresses Lakshmi ma'am's point, that it has a good vision, but the roadmap is not clear. As much as the dream has to come true by 2030. So work has to start. So unless you start planning, it will never happen. So by 2030, I hope to see things falling in place.
Sure. No. I think very apt answers. I just want to add a line to this. The question was really on balanced education, and all of us have attended so many seminars where we kept talking about technology and technology-related intervention before COVID. I must say that while COVID has created havoc in the entire world, one thing it has done is it's actually made us all sit back, take a pause, and seriously take up this whole concept of technology and technology platforms and integrating into education very seriously. I think to that effect, today, I think what's going to happen is that the brains of the industry are now, they've seen both sides. They've seen full blown offline physical models, and to a large extent, they've seen an online way of doing things in the last 60 days. And therefore, this has given us a nice little, let's say, a thinking platform to merge the two and bring in that whole balanced output. So I think in some way, this could be a silver lining in some form to a dark cloud that we went through. Next question, ma'am. Kanan?
Yes, sir. So there are some 3 or 4 similar questions. I'm just combining it into one. So the question is, Netflix was able to reach to a diverse audience. Do we platter like that in NEP? If yes, does this align with enhancing child's unique traits?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, that's again what some of them mentioned, right? I mean, I'll try and give a small insight into it. Uh, I think somewhere what I have noticed when EduTech and academia came together, it was a very exciting period. I think a lot of EduTech tried to understand what happens inside classrooms and design some brilliant products around it. But somewhere my sense is that it has been restricted to a few cities. It has been restricted to urban and probably tier one cities. And maybe one needs to start going a little deeper into the hinterland of India. And I think once you start doing that, just like how Netflix has started reaching a diverse audience, we'll also start reaching a diverse set of children. So there must be some child who's 10 years old sitting in a very, very interior part of India where there's no school in that particular district and who might want to learn. And I think that is the challenge that one needs to to reach. And my sense is that somewhere with what's happening on the let's say the way Geo is starting to go around digitizing the entire country, and I don't want to be specific on any one brand here, but the way digitization is starting to happen, and with education now starting to go that route, I don't see it too far when a child sitting in a remote part might just have a little hand device, and there would be some way of starting to understand how to learn. So I think it's going to happen, I'm already starting to see a lot of governments being very, very serious about this. Our organization, apart from working with private schools, also has a lot of interactions with government. And I know for sure that right now, as I talk to you, there are quite a few governments talking to us about how to change this whole way of teaching inside classrooms. A think tank is sitting and trying to work on it, and the challenges of internet, etc., are going to be explored. So yes, the answer is not yet, not as in the same speed as what Netflix did, but I think the direction has been set, and I think it's a matter of putting the brick and the nuts and bolts together.
Thank you, sir.
Unless
Uh,
anyone has any other point, I can ask her to go to the next question.
I think next one.
Okay, Kanan.
okay, so the next question is on the soft skills of a child by Miss Soumya. She's asking about how can we assess the original thinking and social skills of a child.
Can I answer?
Yeah, please do, ma'am.
Yeah. Um, First of all, do we have to assess everything? And do we have to assess and put that in a box and label it so quickly? Skill set like soft skill or social interactions or mental health or life skills or such an evolving learning curve. And there is really actually a big test that's waiting, that's called life. I think, this whole idea of everything has to be assessed can put us in a danger. Yes, what we can do is we can have checkpoints, we can have measures, and that doesn't have to be made, in terms of categorizing or scoring, but in terms of certain milestones is what we should.
Vinesh, can I just add on to it?
Yeah, actually, the last few words we missed out, but yeah, we understand what you mentioned, Lakshmi man. We are talking about why go down that path of assessing in the first place. Manish,
So,
you have a
Yeah, I meant what I meant was that yes, you can have milestone measures or some kind of indicators to see whether the child has. But the minute you give this tool assessment, then you start categorizing. But it's also the stages of evolution. And again, one tool will not fit everyone. The social skills or soft skills are a lot dependent on the context in which the child is growing. So one has to be very, very careful to universalize these kind of assessment tools.
Manish.
So I'll just come to my favorite line, which says that the difference between a normal child and a genius is 10,000 hours. And that's what Malcolm Gladwin in his book called Outliers tells you. So there's always a generalization to a specialization category which you do it. So schools always generalize a particular subjects and then it moves to a specialization path. What I'm trying to tell you is that unless you have evolving, Lakshmi ma'am said that you have to evolve, but for evolve, you need to know where you start. So if you as an introvert and I as an extrovert and somebody called as an introvert, we all start evolve at our own paces, we will reach our destination in a fairly different way. So if there is a startup point to identify what you are best at, and if there is a point to identify what you're not good at, which means that you know the strengths and you know the weakness, and you have the school, you have the rest of the evolution pattern to actually evolve you. But to reach to where you are, and by not putting parental or peer pressure, you need to know that one tiny genius in you, which you could only know by evolving, which you could only know by assessing yourself. Like, for example, if Messi was being told, let's play football and let's play cricket and let's play 5 other sports, he wouldn't be doing what he is. So all child prodigies or any prodigy which is not by making of any huge pressure always happens when you have a particular child evolved after you know where he is. You cannot put everybody under the same pedestal.
Kanak, would you tend to agree on this? Because I think what Manish is talking about is a sense of pre-assessment. And in your case, for example, Sarah wants to go and share a different box, which clearly shows that she's an extrovert. Now, knowing that about her, does that make a certain change in the way one can teach Sarah vis-a-vis maybe somebody else who may not be as much open to going and meeting people?
So I strongly believe, I tend to agree with Lakshmi ji that, why assess, everything and anything. And, I think engagement, exposure, experience, these are very, very important for all children. The more we expose children to various experiences, the more we engage, you will see them developing more. I feel that, Manish was saying that there has to be some starting point, or there has to be one particular identification, etc. While I agree with it, I also feel that the more you expose children, that one particular gem will start emerging on its own at times. I've seen it in my own house, and I've also seen it at the schools, where we maintain files for children, where we track their progress, and we don't pressurize them. We give them options to do what they want to do, and we guide them accordingly. Yeah, so I think that works better.
Can I come in, Vinesh?
Yeah, ma'am, you could just, could you summarize that?
I think especially because the question was about soft skills and social aspect, or, social emotional element. I think the very fact that, that if we can accept that it's quite okay to be an introvert as much as an extrovert, and that the school system, of course, unfortunately, our, whole ecosystem values one over the other in everything, someone who is more conversationalist rather than someone who is quiet, but probably that someone who is quiet is a better listener. So I think we need to change the narrative. We need to change it, and we need to be very, very careful with, especially with this, assessing the social emotional aspects or the soft skills, especially very early stages, and then you are giving a certificate. And I think if you're in a, of course, interestingly, all of you get the best certificate. So it's kind of lifelong, you're living with that. But I think you need to be very, very careful, and it has to be questioned as what purpose does it serve? What purpose does it serve?
So would we be fair in saying that, that yes, maybe one needs to use assessments to understand the child for adding value, but definitely not use that to start comparing, definitely not use that to certify one against the other.
Vinesh, we as a culture thrive on, sequentializing. No, they bloody put 1 to 100. We want to know the minute the child comes with this certificate, the first question is, aur kisko mila hai?
No, but that's why you forget. You forget, ma'am, that you're part of the MHRD. So आप kalam utao and make the change, right? That's the recommendation we're going to be making on this particular.
May I comment here? May I comment here?
Yeah, ma'am. Alka, ma'am, your words.
Your times.
May I comment here?
Yeah, just quickly, ma'am.
Yeah. See, soft skills are a collection of the attributes, positive attributes, and they just, I think, don't focus on being an introvert or an extrovert. I think it is much more to a person's personality, and community, society has to play a big role. It be it the parents, be it the teachers. So I think we have to demonstrate by example, and we have to walk our talk. If we expect them to respect others, we have to demonstrate it. So children learn a lot by imbibing us. And if I look at the traits of all successful people, they have something in common, and that is the soft skills. Sure. People, they should be able to respect each other, whether they are introverts or they are extroverts. They should have a habit of using the golden words like please, sorry, thank you. What if the teacher enters a class, the child very excitedly wishes her good morning, and the teacher says, good morning, sit down. So where is the please? Sure. The child asks the parent, may I come in? And the parent says, Aja. Where is the please? Where is the thank you? Where is the welcome? So all these things, team spirit, I think damage control, all these form a part of the soft skills. And I feel time management, all these, they have to be picked up. They are generally picked up. So we have to teach them by example.
Great. No, I'll take the cue on time management. Manish, you want to finish it?
Yes. At the end of the day, I would love to send my child to a school where there is no assessment, at least till 3rd standard. People who say there shouldn't be an assessment, tell me for my kindergarten, for my nursery, from my preschool to my 1st standard to my 2nd standard, don't you give me a chart which says that my child is D+ or C+ in arts or commerce.
Manish, I think there are schools.
That's beautiful. So what I'm saying is that unless there are no assessments to start with, that's how one has to progress in. But if
MHRD kal bolega to bhi,
you should use one of this as one more assessment tool in the list of assessments you have it, so that it helps you ease out rather than comparing.
All right. So I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to give this question the medal for attracting the maximum answers and for actually causing a certain amount of discussion within the group. But yeah, Kannan, sorry, I'm just going to go to the next question in the interest of time. It's already 7 o'clock. Kannan, any more questions?
Yes, so there are many, but I would request you for one last question.
Yeah.
That is by Mr. Dexter. Where do you feel this education system would take the next generation?
Oh boy. Okay. Again, it's got a lot of linkages to all that we spoke about.
Can I say that? Can I say something?
Ma'am, you're the fastest fingers first. Please go ahead.
Definitely better than the previous generation. Definitely.
Okay.
Probably they have lived through a lot of shit, sorry to use that word. And I think they are going to look at environment differently. They probably will be more accountable. Maybe they would take more political responsibilities. I am very hopeful. Definitely more better than our generation. We have screwed it up. Thank you.
Well, I think that's a little harsh, but yeah, I admit that it's going to get better.
Yeah.
But I think we can call ourselves as a sandwich generation. I think we've really been
Yeah.
sandwiched
Okay.
between the
Fine.
next gen and the.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
I think the focus
No, but what
will
I
move
meant to say.
from the focus will move from TTT, that is teacher taught that, to STT, student thought that. So students will now start thinking on their own,
That's
and probably the focus will shift from textbook learning, mugging up, puking it in the exams, to I think more experiential and vocational directions.
I think that's very interesting. TTT to STT. I think that should give the answer to Mr. Dexter. I would also like to say that I heard in one of the seminars, Mr. Mohandas Pai, ex-Infosian, had mentioned that going forward in the next generation or the next 10 years, information is going to be all round. So the real test is not going to be absorbing information because it's going to be there. I think it's going to be more important for the next generation to know how to absorb it and how to articulate it and how to be able to put it forth on a table to get his or her work done. And I
And
think as
which
long
one
as
to
that
not,
happens, and what to not say. That's right. That's right.
yeah, which one to not use, this whole sieving it through.
Yeah, and of course, as long as folks like Manish and EdTech is around, you're going to see much more work on that front to be able to help make the next generation a little
But
better.
I think
Yeah.
history
And
always
also
has
And I
its.
think we'll have more than professionals,
Vinesh?
we'll have more entrepreneurs coming our way in the future, probably.
Yeah.
Focus will be on entrepreneurship.
Also, I
Yes.
think we see it even in our own homes. I think they are more, ready to articulate, and they are redefining the idea of respect. They're redefining the idea of responsibility. We do see that already. Our
Yeah.
students, the way that we have been students to now when we have students, there is a
Right.
big difference. They definitely want to talk about their rights and their
Right.
autonomy, all that.
Right. No, I think it's wonderful to know that there are many more questions. It's already 7 o'clock. We're almost 90 minutes into the session. Kanan, just skim through and just see if there's any one or two
Just send a
questions that
screenshot
you.
to Mr.
Yeah,
Vinesh.
because no, just pick up any question that you think is different from the rest, if you can.
Just say 2 or 3. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So the one question is by Mr. Harish Kumar. Please tell me how can we substitute the following aspects of school: organizing school assembly, school head student, literary head sports head, study tour, science fair, science sports, please.
Okay, so Ms. Kanan, you'll have to do me a favor. You'll have to give everybody's email IDs to this gentleman because that's something which we may not be able to
Yeah.
tell on this particular show. But
It will
each
require
of
one
them
more
has got,
seminar. One more
each one of
2 hour
them would,
seminar.
yeah, but there are a lot of experiences. They've all been drawing, right? I mean, Kanak has got a lot of experience in this. I'm sure Ms. Lakshmi Kumar and Ms. Alka ji would have had it. So they will share that with them on an email if required. What are the next couple of questions?
Sure, sir. The next question is by Mr. Vishal Gupta. What you all think about the role and contribution of companies like Byju's, Topper, Vedantu in improving the learning path and giving more exposure and options?
No, again, I think we have discussed it enough. We don't want to get into the brands, but I think what we're talking about is supplementing physical teaching with a lot of technology-led enabled teaching, and that's what some of these folks are doing. And I think that will continue to get stronger and stronger as long as you're able to balance the two. One cannot be without the other. One cannot coexist without the other, and that's what we need to keep in mind. Next question, please.
So next question is by Mr. Venkateshan. Nowadays, most of the education system is based on marks, and parents are expecting only marks from their child. So if we want to change the view, but how can we expect the parents to change the view?
Again, difficult to go into that topic in detail, but I think Ms. Lakshmi mentioned that in one of our talks. I think we clearly talked about the fact that a lot of things have to change in the NEP on these areas. And I think somewhere as parents, we'll have to make our voice heard. And I think more
I think a
parents
child
need to
has
do
written
this.
it for his parent.
So
Also, I
I
think
yeah.
uh, see, what is happening is we are caught into this such a vicious cycle. We blame the government blames the school system blames the teachers blames the parents. It's like this, and finally we realize no one except the child really wants a change in, not having to be so mark centric. Because even school systems where we don't want to get into marks, the first thing is that where are the marks? I think each of us as stakeholders have to change the attitude. MHRD may even bring a change, but then we seem to be reinventing this wheel of marks for the last 70 years. I think we really need a nice good kick, and maybe COVID is a good kick for us.
No, I think on the positive side, there is a new education policy coming out after 30 odd years. And I think a lot of what is mentioned in that, at least from a directional perspective,
Very
and
aspirational and
it is
beautiful.
aspirational.
Yes,
And I
it's
think
going to. We are going to have now assessment not on a 3 long exam. The focus will be on classroom participation, will be on communication skills, co-curricular activities, and it's going to be more of a CCA kind of a pattern going on.
correct. I think we must give this the due credit for at least setting the direction in place. It's a big
Absolutely.
country.
Yes.
There
So
are
I'll add
many
up
many
to it,
students.
if I can. I think it's a win-win for the parents and the students, because the schools is much more aligned in to give a lot of experiential learning in the right way to the children. So I think the parents and children are actually going to get a lot of benefits out of this learning.
Yeah. So like I just said, it's a big country, and there are more than 30 crore children studying in this country. So by the time it starts seeping into the states, and education is a state subject, center can put the basic direction in place, and
True.
the states are starting to pick it up. So I think we should really look forward and see the glass certainly half full in this particular
Absolutely.
aspect.
Absolutely.
Kanan,
Vinesh,
last. Yeah,
I'm
sorry,
just gonna
Kanan.
add one point, if I may. So, I think we'll have to look at it in a manner that we need to educate parents. We need to talk to them regularly about, the direction change. We're talking about the 21st century skills. We're talking about companies like Amazon and Google that did not exist when I was in school, and these are the companies which have become sort of the benchmark. And our children need to understand not how to create or replicate an Amazon, but to think in that direction. And unless we talk to our parents also about it, because it's human conditioning, right? Mentally, we are also conditioned to marks or a judgment. Like when I hire someone, I never hire for marks. I always ask them to tell me stories about themselves. And I think that's a very interesting experience for them also and for me also. I learn so much from interviewing so many people that I do every day. So I think, we need to talk to parents more. We need to expose them to a lot of things that are happening across the world, not just subject it to the children and assume that, this story will go back to the parents.
So I think good. This is brilliant. I'm going to take the liberty to probably stop the questions. In any case, Kanan has said that she has covered all the questions. But if there are any of you whose questions we have not been able to answer, or whose questions have not been read, sorry, apologies. It's just that it's a time bound seminar or a webinar, and do push in your questions to Kanan at Brainfeed, and she will certainly share all our email IDs with you for us to respond wherever we missed out. I think this has been a wonderful webinar. I think the kind of conversation and the kind of intellect that came out on this panel was fantastic. I particularly like the passion and the excitement, because there were questions that just kept getting answered by everybody. And when you see someone actually pushing through and saying, "Can I also say something?" It just shows the repertoire and the whole the amount of thought that exists in all of us to actually make a difference. On that note, thank you so much, everybody. I think it's been wonderful, moderating and chairing the session. And I must say that this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, and stay safe, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Everyone. It was nice to
Vinesh.
connect to
Thank you
all
for
of you.
moderating as
Thank
well.
you so much.
Thank
Signing
you.
off.
Thanks a lot.
Lovely.